Hello, my name is Kaylee Grinder, and this is my group leading report assignment. So for my group, I held a grief support group that I held at the Cornwall Public Library on Sunday, April 14th, and the time of the meeting was 1:15 to 2:30. The library was only open from 1 to 3, so it wasn't the most ideal time. Therefore, I only had a number of participants of 5. I also don't think I had enough time to advertise for the group, but going forward, if I continue to host a group, which I plan to, I reached out to the community outreach and we're going to try to keep it going. But going forward, I'm going to put it in the monthly newsletter so we have more time. So for the meeting, I did not have a co-leader. I was the only leader. And there were times that the community outreach would attempt to direct conversation, but I would refocus and try to maintain control of the group. So the nature and purpose of my group, as I said, it was a grief and loss support group, was to provide a sense of understanding and healing to those that are going through grief and loss. As I mentioned before, the meeting was set up for the sole purpose of the assignment, but I would like to expand upon it going forward after I graduate in just a few weeks. The group dynamic, content, and process. So I began with an icebreaker to set the tone for the group and to try to draw out members to be more comfortable with me as well as the other members. My goal was to not have it be super heavy. As the group, I knew the tone of the group was going to be heavy, so going forward I wanted it to be a little bit less heavy and a little more comfortable. However, immediately after we began and I did the disclaimers and who I was, what the purpose of the assignment was, and all of the introduction of myself and the rules of the group of respect for others, it immediately went into talking about the loss of the loved one. And it began to get emotional. Almost immediately, members started crying. But the icebreakers that I chose was, what was your happiest memory and what are you most proud of? From here, I did allow the members to discuss with one another and to get to know each other, but to maintain control and focus of the group, I said while we are discussing their loved ones, we can acknowledge what a great loss this is and how the initial loss is a primary one. And then I went into primary and secondary losses. I moved on to the ripple effect activity, which was a poster board and had a circle in the middle that represented their their loved ones that they lost, and on the outside was all the secondary losses that they experienced as a result of that loss. We took turns writing on for each member, and then we discussed how the feelings and emotions that came up with. One of the things that the members acknowledged was that each person experienced it in their own time, in their own part of their own grief journey. They experienced those secondary losses. So I think that allowed them to feel less isolated, to know that they weren't alone, and it was a good way to start out the group. From here, after we reflected on those emotions, we then discussed how, as I said, there's feelings of isolation, how there's a lack of support after grief, and how it can be hard to see those people that are in there that are supporting them through all of it after the grief train has ended. And the grief train, one of the members just explained, was when after someone passes, they bring in food and they check in and there's constant support, and then the support just stops. So that was one thing that we did take some time to discuss, was the grief train. And then I brought it back to the next activity, which was the support chain, where we had strips of paper and we wrote out each person's support. This activity did make me nervous because some members might have different support teams. Some might have smaller, bigger, and I didn't want to make anyone feel more isolated or sad about their situation. But one member did notice that other members were longer, and she acknowledged it, but in a beautiful way. She said how beautiful you are, that you're all blessed with such a wonderful team. And then she said that her team wasn't small, it was just that they all passed. So then we discussed those feelings and we moved on through that. And I did notice while I was reading hers that one of the things she said was that her support was herself. So I took that and I segued it into our next activity after some reflection on how we can take care of ourselves and how we have to be our biggest support team, our support members. through self-care activities such as journaling, meditating, going for a walk, etc. And I had flyers printed up. From there, we talked about how other things we can do to help with depression and anxiety and the feelings associated with that, as we talked about the stages of grief and how grief is not linear. There can be different stages at different times, and for them to be aware that it's okay to be in whatever part of the journey that they're in their grief. I think overall it went well, and it was received, despite the heaviness of the group, it was received well. I was nervous, as I am talking to the camera right now. And I did stumble on my words, and I said quite a few times, I'm sure. And there was one point where I lost my bearings, I think, a little bit, and I forgot my wording. And the members could sense my nervousness, and I explained to them this was my first time leading, and it was my first time talking in front of a group. And they kind of guided me through it and offered me reassurance. So that was really helpful to get my confidence back and to work on my body language and eye contact, and to continue on with the group. I do feel my self-assessment, I do feel that I was well organized, that my time management was well, besides the time that I lost my wording and I became nervous. I think overall I did maintain focus of the group. I did a good job going from activity to the person to the group to back to activity. I didn't rush it, and I didn't want it to feel disingenuous. I wanted to allow time for reflection because it was such a sensitive topic. I do think I was able to maintain the focus of the group, and I did stay within my time constraints. So that was my positives. My negative, I just think that I was very nervous, and I think with time I can get more comfortable. For my conclusion, I said I invited my best friend to be one of the members, as she had just lost her father, and I asked her, from her personal opinion, if, so I've been asking her to go to support group for a while, I asked her if she felt like she took anything away from it, and she said she liked how I opened up with the positive memories of her loved one. She said it set a really good tone for the group, and she felt that she was not alone in her feelings, and she really did like that the group was able to support one another and to connect in that way, and she said she would like to continue going forward. I think that my biggest takeaway was seeing how I was able to draw out each member, even if they were uncomfortable or the emotions were too hard to do. Creating a safe space for others is a big part of why I want to be in this field. So getting to experience that was really rewarding. And that's my report. Thank you.